welcome to Pies Around the House. In this video I'm going to show you how to chase a wall. I'll show you how to mark out the chase, how to cut out the chase and how to secure your cable and back box to the wall. So first of all we need to mark out our chase. Now my chase is a vertical chase, so it's going all the way from the ceiling down to the point I want my switch. If your chase is going across a wall, then it's a horizontal chase, but the method is exactly the same. So the next thing to consider is where you want your socket or light switch. In my example it's a light switch and I want it directly next to this existing switch here. Now as you can see I've already marked this out for the purpose of the video, but all you would do is take your back box, place that on the wall and position it exactly where you want your switch or socket, and then you just draw around it. Then once you've got your position of your switch or socket, you then need to draw either a vertical line like mine or a horizontal line over to the point at which your cable is accessing it. Like I said, in my example, it's coming from the ceiling, but you may have a chase coming from another socket or another light switch. If you take a look at the back box, you have set entry holes, and they're usually on one side or the other. So I've lined mine up to come down to this hole here. So placing that on the wall, I can mark either side of that entry hole. The next thing we need to do is take a spirit level, place this next to your mark, and using the spirit level, ensure that you draw a nice plumb line up the wall. Obviously, if you're doing a horizontal line, then you want it level, not plumb. Then we draw one line all the way to the top of the wall. Then we need to do the same thing again and draw another line the width of your chase. Now to make sure you get the width of your chase correct, you need to know what capping or what conduit you're using in the wall. In this example I'm using this oval conduit, so my chase needs to be a little bit wider than this. And actually the second line I've already drawn was a bit wide, so I'm now going to amend that using my conduit. Although if you're using conduit like this, I think it's a good idea to leave a little gap either side of it to allow your bonding plaster to fill into it when the plaster is going over it at a later date. It just allows a little bit of space for it to adhere to the wall. And at this particular angle, you can see the cable that I'm going to bring down through this chase to the switch. So the next thing to consider is how we actually make the chase. Now a very quick way to do this is by using an angle grinder or a chasing machine. The angle grinder has a single blade and the chasing machine has two, which you can set at the width of your chase. However, unless you're using an extraction system, it's often an extremely messy job. Once the cuts have been made, you can then just use a mallet and a bolster or a masonry chisel to remove any masonry or plaster. The second option is just to use a mallet and a masonry chisel and do the whole thing by hand, but this is extremely time consuming, especially if you're on tough masonry. Or another option, which I'm going to use today, is to go through the wall and make a neat cut with my multi-tool. I'm then going to go through it with the mallet and the bolster chisel to remove the masonry. And the reason I'm going for this option is I know behind this gypsum plaster there's a thick layer of the old lime mortar. Now hopefully this should come away quite easily, take me back to the brickwork. If this does go pear-shaped, then I might have to resort to the angle grinder. However, because I'm living in the house, I really don't want to make a load of mess and get dust everywhere, so we're going to start with plan A. If we have to move to plan B, we will. The next sensible thing to do would be to put a dust sheet over the floor. In my example, I've got old carpet, it's going soon, so I'm just going to roll it out of the way. So you can see I'm just going to leave my mess to go on the timber floorboards, and then I can hoover these up easily later. I've then used a dust sheet over the spindles and the handrail just to stop any debris getting down my stairs. You do whatever suits you. And the next thing we're going to need is some eye protection and some ear protection. These are my Class Olson ear defenders. They've got DAB radio, they do Bluetooth for your MP3 player, and you can make phone calls on it as it's got a little microphone in it as well. I'll put a link to these in the description section below because the sound quality on these is great and I love them. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut around the mark for my switch. Then I'm going to go up my marks for the chase. I'm going to get my ear defenders on, listen to some music, and I'll be back with you in a minute. So I'm just going to chisel that out and see if the plaster behind this is like I remember. You see all that black mortar coming out there, that's the old lime stuff. What I might do is go and get the hoover now, and I'm going to suck all that out. And one more thing I should have mentioned is obviously if this gets a bit dusty, wear a dust mask as well. can see here, old Victorian house. I'm quite lucky because this black mortar is just coming away, but the principle's the same. Just use your masonry chisel with your mallet, chisel out the chase until it all falls away and you're back to the depth that you want. And to get in tight at the top, I'm just going to change the cutter on the multi-tool, finish the last bit off, and then hopefully we can chisel that out. And right at the top here, I've just found a bit of scrim tape, so I'm going to cut that, because if I pull it, I'll end up bringing half the ceiling down. Then we just hold this up to the chase, and then we need to cut it off just above our back box. So I'm going to mark that with my thumb. I'm going to use this saw to cut it. Then holding your conduit or your cap in the chase, hold it flat like that and look for any high spots. If your hole's not deep enough in places, then you obviously need to chisel out a bit further. Now mine looks pretty good until it gets to about here. So I'm going to mark that on the wall with a pencil. It seems to go back in again by there. So from there to there, maybe a bit higher there. I just need to go back over that with a chisel and make sure I've got enough depth that this sits back from the front of the wall. So once you're happy your capping or your conduit fits into the chase that you've just made, we can now move on to the back box and make sure that fits as well. So once you're happy, you've got your hole nice and flat at the back and you're able to solidly push this back box in, and it needs to sit back from the front of the wall, which this now does. We've got to go through any one of these holes now. I'm going to put in 2 holes to make it stable with a drill, using a masonry drill bit into this brick wall. I can then put in a wall plug, put some screws through and secure this in nice and tight. And when you're doing this, you'll usually find with masonry, you'll never get a perfectly flat wall. So the thing you can do is place this in and select the 2 holes in here that make this most solid. So if you've got a big gap like there behind one bit, that's going to rock. So what I'm going to do is put probably one on this side there in the middle and one on that side in the middle. Because when I push there together, that's nice and solid. You just select the holes that are right for you. And you may find this easier with an SDS drill. I'm just using this one. I'm going to put it on hammer action in a minute and just take my time. I find with the SDS drill, sometimes it'll bang through old brick, create the hole that's too big, and then we won't be able to secure it in properly. So we've got to be very careful with old brick like this. It can be very crumbly. So I've just made my first hole there on the normal setting. Now I've just put it to hammer action. Now I've started the hole. There we go, that's one. And that's 2. Now I'm going to go through them with a 6mm drill bit, which is the right size for the plugs I'm using. Just to show you quickly, I'm using these Fisher dual power wall plugs. And a quick tip, if you don't want to drill too deep and you only want to go the depth of your wall plug without any fear of popping out the other side or something like that, just wrap a piece of tape around your drill bit, the depth of your wall plug, like that. Then it means when you get to this bit of tape, that's as deep as you need to go. And place your plugs into the holes, and using a hammer, just tap into place. I'm just going to give this one a little extra bump with a chisel. Then I'm just using some 4x40 wood screws to secure this into place. But before we do that, the eagle-eyed of you may have noticed that I've swapped my back boxes. I was actually using this one before, which is the 25mm deep one. This one I think is 15mm or 12mm deep. And this is much better for my needs. I don't need to go any deeper because I've only got one cable going into this one anyway. And you'll notice on this one that it's actually got the oval cutout rather than the round ones. Now we need to put a grommet into these so that our cable can't get accidentally snagged on the end here, but we can use exactly the same grommet for the oval one. We just bend it into place slightly. So first of all, we just need to push this knockout through here. To do that, I'm just going to use my chisel and a hammer. And you can see by giving it a gentle nudge, it just pops through, and then we can pull that out either with the chisel or the hammer, whatever you want really. I'm just going to use the hammer and claw it that way a little bit. And you should find you can start to twist that back and forth. This one's quite tough actually. You can see just by knocking that back and forth a few times, we can now twist it off and it'll break off just like that. And in fact, if you turn this one round the other way, it's actually got a nice pre-formed edge there which won't snag, but when you pull these ones out, you've got to be careful because they can be quite sharp. Then if you take a rubber grommet, which is actually round, but like I say, if we pinch it up, we can fit it into the oval space. You'll see it's got that slightly recessed bit in the middle. That's the bit we need to push over this hole. With a bit of gentle persuasion, you can see now that that's gone nicely into the hole. Then when we place that up, this rubber grommet is in the perfect position for the cable to come down inside. So now taking the wood screws I showed you earlier, I'm going to drive this into place with the impact driver. And before you drive that home tight, just make sure that it's nice and level. The next thing for me to do is get this cable, feed it down through this conduit and stick it out the bottom. So there it is poking out the other end. I'm just going to pull that through. Then I'm just going to feed the cable down through that grommet like that. Bend it back and hopefully the conduit will slip into place. It's a bit tight. There we are, lovely. You can see now that's nicely fitted into the wall. And like I said earlier, if you're using capping, which comes out to either side, you'd need to do a wider chase and then you can just screw through the capping using the same method as we did with this back box by using screws and wall plugs behind it. Or if you're going on to soft block work, you could just use masonry nails. However, in this situation, I've used conduit and this is slightly loose but pulled nicely into the chase. Now there's two options here. You can either, when it's plastered, get the bonding plaster just to hold this in place, which is usually fine, or you can get some grab adhesive and just gently dot and dab on the back and stick this into place. I'll leave that entirely up to you. So a couple of weeks have passed. I've actually just started thinking about prepping this wall. And then when trying to fix this to the wall with some grab adhesive, to be honest with you, it was a little bit too close. It was a little bit below the surface of the wall, but not enough for my liking to get a good bit of bonding plaster over the top. So, as with every job, I've had to go back in with a grinder anyway in the end. Not a problem, because using that multi-tool, it gave me a nice neat line to work with anyway. But you get the benefit now of seeing me using two methods anyway, so we're going to get through this with a grinder. And what I'm going to do is run two channels, one down each side of my chase, make it probably about another 5mm deeper I guess. Then I'm going to go back through it with the bolster chisel and the mallet. I'm just going to chisel that out and just try to deepen any sections that were slightly raised. Some were deep enough, but other ones were just slightly raised, and bowing that little bit of conduit out. So I'm going to get on with that now. So I just hold that conduit out the way. You can see I've gone a little bit deeper now. I'm working my way down that chase with the camera. You can see we're nice and deep. And then if I just pop this cable back through my grommet and try and push this up tight so I can show you the conduit in place. There we are. You can see from the side there, as I go up, you can't see that conduit is sat a lot further back now, which to be honest is a bit better. You don't need it too deep always, but it's worth getting it deep enough that you can get a good few millimetres of bonding plaster on the top of that. And also, it allows me to put a bit of grab adhesive behind it, and the grab adhesive always sits it out a couple of mil anyway, so it's worth doing that. Obviously, if you were using capping and screwing this to the wall, you wouldn't have the same amount of depth, so you wouldn't have to go as deep. But there we are, that's a nice job now. Ready for prepping. If you want to see me prep this wall with bonding plaster, I'll show you that in another video, and I'll also be skimming this wall with a multi-finish plaster. So hopefully you can see now there are a few different methods to chase a wall like this. In the end, as long as we get the result we want, then it's a good thing. If you found this video useful, then please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, press the bell icon for regular notifications. I've been Pies Around the House. Ta-ta, farewell.